So this is you're at the first of the webinar series on family engaged case planning. My name is Ana Bermudez. I am the former commissioner for the New York City Department of Probation, um, where I was for about 12 years. And we tried to go down this road, which was great in many ways. It's not easy, but it really just changed the dynamics and the whole feel of probation, juvenile probation, when we moved from just merely talking to parents to really partnering. And so, uh, this is a different approach from what is the traditional approach. I'm sure many of you who are here today are doing, some of this. What we're here to really introduce is a more intentional way, and one grounded in certain principles of really engaging families as we work with young people in the system. The webinar, just some so that you know who's behind the scenes, which are always the most important people. This has been produced by the Harley Consulting Group on behalf of and with funding from the Annie Casey Foundation. And this is the first in a two-part webinar series. We will be covering some aspects of family engaged case planning today, and there will be a second webinar on August 27th that will cover more case planning matters, and we'll give you all the details afterwards. So today with me are two amazing women, Miracle Teo. Sorry, I lost my little paper with their titles. Hold on, I'm so sorry. Because they deserve their introduction. So Miracle is the co-founder of, hold on. Okay, here we go. Co-founder of the Youth Advisory Council in Santa Clara County, California, and is an alum of the Annie Casey Foundation's Juvenile Justice Youth Advisory Council. Janet Bocanegra, Simon is Executive Director of Justice for Families, which is the national alliance founded and run by parents and families who have experienced the juvenile justice system with their children. Jeanette brings her deep knowledge, expertise, and passion to all her work, and I have the honor of working with her closely when I was the probation commissioner in New York City, and she was instrumental, in really keeping us honest and making sure that we were working, in true partnership. So you will be hearing from them in a moment, and you will learn a lot from them. So today we're going to explore the importance of focusing on relationship building during the initial stage of probation. Okay, so today we're going to go over a little bit of the larger probation transformation process that the Casey Foundation has been spearheading. And then we'll talk about relationship building early in case planning, both meeting people where they're at, making connections to community. We'll do some Q&A, and then we'll close the webinar. As mentioned, the Casey Foundation has been engaged in the process of probation transformation for a while now, and today is really nestled within a broader national context, for this work. So, as you will see in the next slide, Casey has created a series of courses that I encourage everybody to go through. Each course is not extremely long. And what is great about them is that they have multimedia presentations of and from, young people, families, stakeholders, probation folks, and they will provide a wealth of information, for you, adolescent brain development, always something that we should be, continuously learning about. And they also provide it's a rich resource, especially for when you have new staff coming on board, right? And if there's not a major training right away, it's great for them to be able to go through some of these mini courses as they engage in their work. So, the when we think about the young people who need probation intervention, right? System intervention. Uh, how do we take all of these topics, right? Introduction to racial equity, et cetera, uh, and sort of blend them together and use them as the root of um, this interaction, of this time in this young person's life, right? And we believe that it all starts really with family engaged case planning, and that's what we're focused on this today. So let's look at as we look at the overall overarching goals of probation transformation. Let's look at, we can see how they correspond to engaging families, right? We're trying to maximize diversion and making it community grounded and community led. We're focusing probation on young people with serious offense histories, meaning not every that, we really want to stop the trend of having, putting kids on probation, because they might just benefit from that, or they might, but this is really for the young people who are at a serious crossroads in their life, right? We should make it time limited, relationship based, right? That fosters community connections and opportunities. Minimizing placements. Research has demonstrated time and again how terrible this is for young people. Leading with race, their overrepresentation of young people of color in our systems, and grounding all of it in meaningful community partnerships, right? That's one of the things that was really key to the whole process. If I can interject here from our experience in New York City, was really focusing probation in a set of principles, right? Of these, like, concentrating on the serious offenses with lower caseloads, for example, to have it be, community based, because those young people needed those community supports, et cetera. And ultimately, then all of this leads to working with their families. And when I say, let me just also say here that when we say family, we don't mean necessarily, blood relatives. Okay, these are either young people's chosen families or biological families, anybody who is supporting this young person and caretaking for this young person. All right. And so I started to say a little bit of why it's necessary to have family engaged case planning. But I'll just go over some of the highlights of that in the next slide. So family engaged case planning fosters long-term behavior change, because you have those support systems reinforcing all that all the time. It honors voice and expertise of youth and their families, right? They know themselves best. And it's grounded in research of what works. It provides individualized goals and a roadmap, and builds on strengths and celebrates success. So this is, like I said before, today is an introduction webinar that's followed by a second one, but we're also going to be offering in-depth work in family engaged case planning for some selected sites that they will hear about who they are very soon. But we're very excited about this. So if after today, and the next webinar, you get inspired to apply, we will be having, sequential cohorts coming up. Now, to be able to do any of this well, right? The family engaged case planning, it almost is obvious, but we want to make it even 10 times more obvious, is that we need to ground probation in relationship building, both with the young people and, you know, and with the family. That probation is not a desk job, that it's a community job. And this is what Miracle is going to, be discussing with us in this next section.
Thank you, Anna. So right here, we are going to begin with understanding the role of relationship building. And we're comparing from traditional probation versus transformed probation. As you see here, the purpose of probation, of traditional probation, was more about priority on surveillance and compliance monitoring, whereas the purpose of transformed probation is prioritizing promoting long-term positive behavior change, right? Because we know once the youth leave from our hands, they enter into the world as young adults who then just continue to grow and to be their own person as adults in this world. And we want to make sure we leave a positive impact on them. The role of probation officers in traditional probation is more like a referee, right? The referee just calls out when they're doing something wrong in the game, right? And that's what it can feel like, or it has felt like for many youth with the traditional probation. Whereas the role of a probation officer on transformed probation is more as a coach. Now, a coach is still going to hold you accountable, but also is rooting for you, right? It's really the coach is on your team, So if they're rooting for the young person, and I'll get more into what how that can impact the young person. The role of youth and family and community when it comes to traditional probation is viewed as needs fixing, right? Minimal engagement, and just more so what the probation officer, and it all depends on the probation officer. That's why we say minimal engagement. And then we have the role of youth, family, community on the transformed probation, whereas their youth and family community are being viewed as experts. They're being viewed as partners. Now, why is that? Because the young person is the expert in what they need. Now, they may need guidance, of course, but the young person is the only one who can tell anybody about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, right? And when it comes to also the family community, the partnership that needs to be built between them and the probation officer is going to be key to getting those positive outcomes that we all want for this young person. And now, as I stated all of that, and as you can also see yourself, I want you to think to yourself, what do you believe the role of relationship building looks like in the traditional probation versus what it also looks like in the transformed probation? I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that to yourselves. And based on everything that you see here, even from your own experience of being in this field, really just thinking on that, or pondering on relationship building. What has that looked like, with traditional probation, and what should it look like with the transformed probation? So what we put here, the role of relationship building when it comes to traditional probation is minimal. What we mean by that is that we're not saying that probation officers do not create relationships, as we know that probation officers, some have. However, it's not required, right? That is why we have placed minimal when it comes to building strong relationships. It's more of something that's not expected, right? In fact, we know that relationship building has its challenges and it can be difficult. Whereas transformed probation, it's prioritizing the focus on relationship building, meaning it's understanding that the only way that we can help our young people is solely by building relationships, and not just with their youth, but with our youth and with their family and with their community, right? But it all starts with the youth. And so, as I mentioned about, positive outcomes, how we can get those positive outcomes with our young people and those meaningful accountability with them is building relationships with them is absolutely necessary, and it must be prioritized. Which leads me to our next slide of why focus on relationships, right? We know that just one positive relationship can really change the trajectory of a young person and boost their success. And with probation officers, you guys have such a special position in young people's lives. Like, the way I look at it is, when a young person comes to you, you are now a part of that young person's village. And it's a very sacred position. Somebody who, like me, I'm a Pacific Islander, and we're raised in a small island, but it's community oriented. It's a village. We all come together to help one another, and that's what it takes. And you, as the probation officer, now becoming a part of that village of this young person, you guys have such a sacred responsibility, and that responsibility requires intentionality. It requires gentleness, kindness, and it requires patience. And so when we talk about what it means to build relationships, we know that's not going to happen, overnight. It takes intentionality of every time you're engaging and meeting with this young person. A while ago, when I was once a young person in the juvenile justice system, when I first got into the system, I had a negative experience. The probation officer I had, we barely talked. I just came in, she wouldn't even look at me. There was no hello, kind of just like, okay, check mark, check mark. And I was very confused on what was going on. I'm only 15. I don't understand nothing. And mind you, as a teenager, at that time, I don't care. I just want to come because I have to. I don't want to get in any more trouble, and I'm being forced by my parent. And I want to get out of there. But the thing is, it seems like that probation officer had the same attitude. And so that's where it's kind of like, okay, well, she doesn't care. Why should I care, right? And it ended up leading to where I was failed out of that probation program, because the probation officer didn't tell, like, what, because there wasn't any type of rapport built between us. She didn't let me know that I was failing in a certain area. She just allowed me to fail past the 5 tests that I could only have like 5 dirty tests. And she allowed me to go past 5, way past 5, before telling me anything. She didn't stop me at the first dirty test, the second, the third, or any of that. She allowed me to just fail. And so, because I got failed from that program, I was sent deeper into probation, when what I came in for probation to begin with was it was a misdemeanor. And because of just, the lack of intentionality, the lack of understanding the purpose of building relationship, I got deeper into probation. Now, what's crazy about going deeper into probation, the second probation officer I had was amazing. That's actually where I got to experience a probation officer who genuinely cared. And I say, just an example of what I mean by that is our first initial meeting. We didn't talk about what I did or what not, because he already knows what I did. He sees it on the paper in front of him. He literally looked at me in my eyes. He gave me the respect to put everything down, gave me his full undivided attention. And he just started asking me questions. Like, he was complimenting my shoes. He just noticed the little things about me. Because mind you, I'm still a teenager, came in with an attitude. I don't want to be there. But the difference is, he wasn't matching that energy with me. He was showing me like, hey, I'm present, I'm here. I want to know who you are. I want to get to know you. I want to understand who is Miracle, not who is Miracle who committed this crime, or, like, who is Miracle? Who is this young person in front of me? And that was the beginning of that changed my trajectory. I was able to complete probation sooner than what I was given the time of being on probation. I was able to like learn things about myself that I didn't know and be put in programs that could help build up these skills within me. Like he helped connect me to programs in my community that I didn't know that existed. He was so kind with my father, who my father is not from here. I'm a first generation American here of my family. And it was just very patient, very present. And that's what helped build trust between him and I, to where when I was messing up or when I was being pressured, I didn't run away from him. I actually came to him and involved him. I let him know what was going on, because there is that trust built, right? So, as it says here in the slide, one positive relationship could really do a lot. And I can really attest to that because I first had a negative um, experience. Then I had my positive experience, and that positive experience I had with the probation officer definitely outweighs that negative experience because he really just genuinely cared. And I can just tell that any other youth he had, he also cared about them. He treated me more than just a case number. He looked at me as a person because that's what our young people are. They are people and they are going to grow up into, being their own person when they go into this world. So, as we
So
go.
sorry, Miracle. I'm just doing the time check, uh, person, 5 more minutes.
And so as we go into our next slide, you can see here that we have a youth and family engagement continuum that is used by the Justice for Families in their trainings. And you will see this is described in course 5 of our online training series. So here you see that, when there is no case planning, right, we have the standard probation who acts as a case plan. Then at the beginning of this continuum, we have the interaction. This is where the probation officer interacts with the young person with telling and showing the young person the case plan that they created for them. And then we have engagement, where this is now where the probation officer building a relationship with the young person and their family, identifying their strengths and needs, but is still in charge of creating a case plan, but just includes the young person for their input on the case plan. Now, with what we are focused on is partnership. This is where not only is the probation officer engaging the young person and building a relationship with them, identifying strengths and needs, but the probation officer is also seeing this young person and their family as a partner in creating a case plan for them. Because because we understand that only collaboratively, when we come together, can we create those positive changes and outcomes. That is how we can resolve challenges, by partnering with each other, looking at each other. It's like, what? I'm not above you. I'm beside you. We're doing this together because at the end of the day, this is gonna affect the young person's life and what pathway they take in life and where it can lead them. So in order to get to the last box of partnership, is very, 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 very critical that we understand the focus of building relationship and how necessary it is. We must honor our young people and their voices and not treat them as if they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any clue what they're doing or what they're saying. No, these young people deserve to be respected because they are still a person. And these young people, they know what they want. And they can also, they also know when somebody genuinely wants to help them and not, right? So with the young people, the knowledge that they have to offer, especially when it comes to their life, they know what they're talking about. But of course, that is why they need the help of those trusted adults around them, because they still do need guidance because they're still our young people. So really want to focus on how can we get to this last part of the engagement continuum of the case planning, partnership, and through relationship building. And then going on to our next slide, as you'll see here, these are a few aspects that we put together on understanding how to prioritize building those relationships in the initial stage of case planning. And as you see here, we have 7 listed, but for the purpose of this webinar, we will only be focusing on the 2 aspects, which are meeting people where they are at and making connections, not referrals. The rest of these aspects are to be covered in the August webinar. And actually we have, with the set a positive, engaging tone in initial meetings and understanding family and map a circle of care, that is actually covered also in our practice guide. So just to let everyone know that you can refer to that as well. But as I mentioned today, we are focused on meeting people where they are at and making connections and not referrals. Who I'm so honored to pass over to Jeanette, who will be going in depth about what it means of meeting people where they are and making connections, not referrals.
Oh, Miracle, you're amazing. And when we think about the possibilities that our young people have, right, it's up to individuals that can meet those needs. So meeting people where they at, right? So if you can put down in the chat box, what does it mean to you, meeting people where they at? And we've been talking about intentions, doing the right thing for the real reasons. I've heard about practices, policies, right? Traditional versus non-traditional now. So meeting people where they at, what does that mean to you? And if you could put it in a chat box, I would greatly appreciate it, right? And when we're talking about family engagement, case planning, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But, Anna also shared, right, that it could be done in partnership. When we look at partnering with families, and we also talked about, and I heard definitions of family. What's the definition of family? Young people can define that. So meeting people where they at, what does that look like to you? Serving others in spirit, with empathy, beginner's mind, not having standards for everyone, and being subjective, no expectations, creating meaningful opportunities. I see those, right? Meeting people where they are. We talked about trust. What does that look like? Meeting people where they at. I see many folks with empathy, right? You're in the right place, right? Because this is the opportunity that we all have to provide young people with those options and choices that'll help them thrive. As family members, we all want our young people to thrive, right? We want them to be successful. We want them to be productive members in society. So this is an opportunity to create those paths for our young people, meeting them where they at, bringing their families on board. Everyone plays a role. Everyone plays a crucial role. We listen and we learn. I say the hardest job is to be a parent. We forget those adolescent years. So where do we meet our young people and their families at? Getting to know them, their family, understanding their needs. Yes. This is the right team. This is the right team that'll create these wonderful pathways for our young people. We can't give up. Accepting people for where they are at. Yes, that's meeting them where they at. But there's so much going on, right, with trust, with not understanding youth development, and that I'm going to also say that families also forget, right, those adolescent years and how difficult that is. But trust has to be key. We want to be able to share what some of those needs are and not be penalized. So that's why trust is key, that when we're sitting down listening to a young person and their families, that trust doesn't become a mistrust by building a case against a family or a young person, right? Just using the tools that we have to even help families understand the brain development of a young person. And today we know that it takes years, 27, for a young person to be able to even define their path, right? Understanding the trauma. And we know that we have generational trauma based on research. How do we support young people and not trigger those traumas? We sometimes don't understand that words, smell, faces, right, are some of those things that we should be paying attention when a young person and a family meets with us. What are those immediate needs? What are those immediate needs that we can support young people and their families, whether it's food, right, shelter? We know that there's other systems impacting young people and their families prior to getting to you. I understood that in my work with the Department of Probation in New York, that there were many needs that were not being addressed. And looking at the readiness to change, we've seen policies for many years that have not worked, practices that we've just, worked into. Every young person, every family also worries about safety. So how do we start understanding and looking at those reasons why young people and families should be, right, partnering, engaging, right, looking at those pieces that are missing so that we can support, right, that family. We talk about community. We talk about how do we support the community so that they can help young people cross those bridges. I looked at Miracle as she was speaking, and there was a bridge behind her background, which how do we build these bridges in community to help young people thrive? That means meeting them where they at. So being focused about, right, those needs that young people have, being focused about how do we define their family, being focused about those needs and looking at customizing their needs, right? This is not a one size fits all. How do we partner? How do we develop that trust so that we can see in our hands that not just one person, right, is there to influence you, but developing that circle of influence, like Miracle shared. How do we define and build that community so that young people have those opportunities to thrive beyond probation, right? Beyond system mandates. I also heard Anna talk about those hard cases, right? How do we support young people make better choices, right? I also heard Miracle share, right? Someone that can listen and see what are the good qualities that I have that I can offer. We only look at the mistakes. And that's something also that we have to teach families beyond their young person making a mistake. Connecting to community. We know that it's about building those relationships. Referrals have not been the solution to making young people, making sure they complied. Right? How do we connect those relationships to look at the needs? And we might say, well, I didn't come to this job to make these relationships and make connections. I'm in a position where if you make a mistake, there's consequences, but those consequences have caused generations and communities to thrive. How do we build those true, authentic relationships that can allow, right, interactions, that can allow young people to understand that there's life, right, beyond making a mistake? The definition should not, their definition of succeeding in life should not be by making those mistakes. How do we support each other in making sure that the community also has the capacity to continue thriving and building, right, the resources that young people need? And when we talk about how do we do that, there are examples, right? New York has examples of creating a parent support program that has helped families not feel isolated, that has support families not feel stigmatized. We also talk about the credible messengers, right? Lived experience individuals that can talk to young people, that can guide young people, that can, right, demonstrate that there's hope. I think you all have an opportunity today to get the tools and the skills and share some of the dynamic opportunities that young people deserve. We know that systems have not succeeded in making sure that young people thrive. And we no longer need punishment to be the solution, right? We need the support and to take the time to listen to young people, to take the time to engage their families. Families care about their young people. Families want to see their young people thrive, connecting young people to customized programs. Some of the things that we did in New York was really treat young people as individuals with specific needs that will allow them to succeed. And when we did how we did the work we did in New York and continue doing, it was about building relationships and trust. So in order for us to thrive in making sure that we make those amazing connections, because we will make them. You're here for a reason. It's intentional, the work that we're doing, partnering and engaging families to plan, right? The future of their children can be challenging, but it's also going to be rewarding. And one of the most rewarding things for everyone, if you're working with young people and if they succeed as a worker, you feel good because you built those relationships. And a few years later, they're going to thank you, right? Those are the small seeds that we start planting, is making sure that we make those make those connections, build those relationships, and plan. I think that as a mom, if I would not be involved in planning for my children, it'll be difficult to see them succeed. As a young person, when they part of the case planning, you're getting their input, you're sharing ideas, guidance, techniques, and they feel good. They become productive members of their society. They contribute, and they'll have their own family, defining how family looks. And for parents, caregivers, those resources, those connections that we make, we feel good. And when young people thrive, communities thrive. Miracle also shared, right, her cultural support that she received in her community. How do we create communities that support young people? How do we create those communities that help young people thrive so that all young people have an opportunity? Right? We talk about young people are challenging, but we also forget when we were young and how challenging it was to be a young person. As a parent, as a community advocate, as a caretaker, as a thoughtful leader, helping shape and bring the voices of families to the table, we're the missing piece. So when you engage young people and you trust that the family, right, can also learn and contribute, connecting, making these connections are amazing. Building the component of what we need. It takes a village to raise a child. We can't do it alone, right? So the referral, it should not be a referral, thank you, make sure you go. It should be one of the that you have so we can help you get to where you need to, right? So meeting people where they at is not getting them to us, right? It's also making sure that their needs are being met, right? We don't think about at times the challenges that it is when a parent has to take off from work for numerous meetings and numerous referrals. So meeting them where they at is also saying, meeting them during their scheduled time, right? Beyond the 9 to 5, the Monday through Friday. Meeting families where they at is really being mindful about the needs that families have so that we can trust and be partners in moving forward.
So we're going to move to the more formal, if you will, Q&A. So for folks to put, you can put any questions or, comments in the chat.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Gomez. I'm calling from Multnomah County, or I'm not calling, but I'm from Multnomah County. I appreciate this presentation. One of the things that I see as very important is implicit bias and how that plays a role in exactly where family engagement and being at a place where you guys are speaking of. And so in this, I'm wondering where does that play a role? Because when we talk about systems, it's really us upholding a system. It is not, it's not some kind of, entity out there. It's us upholding a system because of some, thoughts and behaviors that we've been ingrained to continue to have. So where is the self-reflection work that's happening as opposed to, where does that all fit in?
I'll take that for a minute, and then Jeanette and Miracle, you can also. I mean, that's the strength of the probation transformation work that's been happening through the Casey Foundation, right? It's very explicit that you need to have that as a grounding lens through which you look at everything, your policies, your procedures, your engagement. Do you assume, and the implicit bias is so strong in in this work because it goes beyond even what people, in my opinion, tend to use. There's race bias there is gender, the boys versus the girls who are in the system. There's the implicit bias that Jeanette, I think, talked about, and Miracle talked about in different ways, which is that people assume that the parents are screwed up, and that's why the kids are screwed up, and that's why you can't really engage them because this is where they're at. You hear all the time, well, they're going to their prior environment, so what good is it that we're doing? Well, guess what? All the people's environments are the product of these bias, of these systemic issues that need to be listened to and heard. You're not going to cure them because you can't, but you can, and through the power of that relationship, engage with someone at a level where they are being truly heard and seen. And I think that opens up then a bunch of doors to success that have not been there before. So that would be my 2 cents on that. Miracle or Jeanette, if you guys want to add.
I'll jump in, Sylvia, and just say that if you read the Justice for Families Unlocking Futures report, it'll give you some insight of who the families are, right? Families that we surveyed were families that were rooted in their community, families that were going to, right, have faith-based involvement, families that truly love their children. But there's a stigma, right? There's a stigma attached to these families are horrible families raising horrible kids, and we're going to do a better job in raising their kids. And this is not the only system doing that. We also have the child welfare doing that, right? So we are demonstrating that, no, I'm also a mom impacted by the juvenile justice and criminal justice system, my youngest of 6. So prior to that, I had no involvement and no clue how horrible it was. But when working on the report and being now this lived experience parent, I realized that there's so much more that we can do as partners. I'm also an expert in building community. I've worked with a nonprofit for many years in the public school system. So no, I'm not this parent that don't love her kid, who we gotta remove him from her household and we'll do a better job. No, they did a horrible job. And I'm still dealing with the trauma. But we are demonstrating that we are experts also. If we partner and listen to each other, there was never no trust. Parents don't trust probation. Probation don't trust parents. And I was able to demonstrate that, no, there's nothing different, right? When we look at who's serving our kids now, we've been following policies. There's been some horrible practices. And right, COVID highlighted much of those issues. And it also highlighted that many leaders were able to make discretionary decisions. They didn't look at a practice. They didn't look at a policy, right? We thought about how are we going to help these families? How are we going to help these children? How do we support the community so that they could be an extension? Anyway, I can go on and go on and go on, but join, right? Bring some more of your team. We are the flavor of Annie KC.
That's great. There was a question here. How soon do you see families engaging with the case plan or becoming on board with the idea of it? You know, did everybody hear me say that question? It's in the chat also. So I think at first, like Jeanette was just saying, because you have to overcome the trust issue. That's why we focus so much on that relationship building in the first 4 to 6 weeks of probation, because you are not starting with the case plan. You're using those relationships and that period to lead into that first draft of the plan. That then becomes, as you'll see in other webinars, like then how do we make that become the agenda for each probation meeting, right? And then how do you engage with the family? One thing that the pandemic did in terms of getting us all, the departments of probation that we used to operate in an IT, dark ages, come online in a way. And so now it's actually easier to engage a parent who can get on a Zoom, during their lunch hour if they're working, or while they're taking care of the other children, a little moment with their phone or whatnot, right? So I think that that relationship building is what gets people connected around the case plan. The other thing that we had as a policy in New York City was that if the parent doesn't engage, even in those 6 weeks, that what the officer would do would be to mail the parent the initial case plan, and say, hey, just let you know what we're doing, where we're going, what kind of goals we're setting. If you want to talk about this at any time, let us know, right? And then whenever it was adjusted in any way, we would send it again. And I don't have data as to whether how many of those we had to do versus not, but those were also engagement strategies. Then we realized that the case plan was focused on a lot of the aspiration of the young person. Like our case plan was always focused around future orientation, and essentially the quintessential question of like, what do you want to do when you grow up, kind of thing, right? That a lot of our young people haven't even had the chance to think about. And then we realized we were in the process, when I left, we were in the process of adding what is the family's aspiration for the young person, so that the family would be also locked into, a future orientation for the young person. I don't think I've ever met a parent who doesn't want a good life for their child, ever. Or a better life that they've had sometimes also. And so I think this rallies around, gets to the strength of the young person, gets to their, to tap onto when was a happy time at home also. What did he say when he was a little kid of what he wanted to do with his life, right? Or her. I use his because it's so much boys in the system. But anyway, so those are the ways in which we were trying to keep everybody on the same page.
I want to share, right? Trust is key in doing this work. And if we start, right, with trust, and at times I think community advocates make it look easier than what sometimes it is, right? Because the struggles are real when you go back to the community. And if we trust, we can really help a young person, right, define where they want to see themselves in at that moment, right? For some of our young people, it's really hard defining or seeing themselves beyond, right, even 15, 20 years old before getting arrested. They don't see themselves beyond 21, 22 alive. With, in some of these communities that, our young people come from, it's difficult seeing themselves and seeing a future. And if you ask them where they want to be or where they want to be at, they might not have a clue. I'm going to say that I was very grateful with a program, Anna, that you had here in New York. Well, I'm not in New York at the moment, but in New York, the GAP program, right?
Oh yeah.
And I went with Jeff to do a home visit with one of the first referrals that he received, right? So that I can connect with the family. And the first question he asked this beautiful young girl, 15, what do you like to do? He didn't ask her, what got you here? Because she may still make those same mistakes. We forget that these are adolescents and they are going to make mistakes, right? And we shouldn't penalize them even more because they made mistakes. We should be able to make sure that those resources and the definition of who we want around them, that it's there, that they can make those connections. Because it's like teaching a baby how to walk, right? He's going to fall down and we're going to still encourage and clap. No, you got this. Get up, get up. So with young people, right? It's also, right? How do we celebrate, right? Those small accomplishments, because it's hard being a teenager. I could never want to be I'd rather be an elder right now. But teenagers have it difficult, right? But it can also be a blessing, right? Because they are going to get to those ages where they want their own family, they have their own job, their career. They're going to contribute to society, whether they like it or not, because Uncle Sam is looking for us. So how do we, right, make sure that the trust is there so that we can make those right connections, build those true, authentic relationships, because we all want our young people to thrive. We want them to succeed, even if they're driving us crazy, even if they sit in front of your office, just because they'll be acknowledged and seen. And all we have to do is listen. Just listen. And we can figure out as a team how to move forward, right? This is a team. You're not alone, right? And we've done things that worked, and we're doing things that can be better. And this is doing it better.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how much time was left. I was just asking
Yeah.
Annie, I was just asking about, given that there's a very high rate of prenatal alcohol exposure among kids in juvenile justice and in foster care, and I'd asked her about, it doesn't seem to be mentioned in Annie E. Casey literature, and I love Annie E. Casey, but I noticed that it seems to be sort of the huge missing piece. It's a profound brain injury, adaptive intelligence is affected, gullibility, they become repeat offenders, they're very susceptible to influence. It's one of the things that here in Maine, they had an investigation of our juvenile justice center, if you will, and found this was one of the biggest recommendations. These kids that go into behavioral health and juvenile justice must be screened for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, prenatal alcohol exposure, which is very different from other drug exposure. So I just wondered, it would be so great to be able to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that to take into consideration. I don't have an answer for you. I'll let you, Annie will probably do the follow-up on this, I am sure. But it might be a good topic for another webinar.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
It definitely
so
is. Real quick,
Okay.
right? We have these parallel other agencies, right, and institutions that we're not collaborating with, and then that's another issue that we have. How do we start collaborating with other systems so that we're not overwhelming families, we're not overwhelming young people, and we're meeting their needs?
Right. So I'm going to bring us then to a close. And thank you all for being here and for being so active in the chat and in your thinking around this. Thank you, Miracle. Thank you, Jeanette. You're fantastic as always. I always love presenting with you. Before you go, folks, if you can complete our server, there's a QR code on the screen right now. I'd be grateful, and I think we can also drop it. Are we dropping it in the chat as well, the link, in case people can't? Yeah, there it is. The recording will be available in the KC website in case you want to either share it with anybody or yourself listen to it, parts of it again. The next webinar topic is on centering youth development in the case planning process on August 27th. We hope to see you there. And don't forget also there's the family engaged case planning practice guide also on the website. So we thank you all for being here, and hopefully we'll see you again.